Calvin, we're here
Yo.
again. All right, let's start with The Last of Us.
Yeah.
So, did you play the original game?
No, I did not play the original
Oh
game.
shit.
Have you? Have you?
No. so I watched somebody play the whole thing.
Oh.
I watched an entire walkthrough. So I didn't have a
Yeah.
PlayStation at the time, so I wasn't actually able to play the game at all.
Yeah.
But now I have a PlayStation. I have played through The Last of Us Part 2, the whole thing. Loved it to death. Um, really, really and truly enjoyed most minutes of it. But The Last of Us Part 1, I watched somebody play the whole thing, and, very much like a movie, you know what I mean? Sat down and actually, like, watched them play it. Formidable game. Very formidable game. Visually stunning. They know how to fucking do it, don't they? They know how to do it. They really do. Have you played any of The Last of Us?
No, I haven't. My experience with the game, I watched some of the cutscenes of The Last of Us 2 because of all the controversy around it, but I basically went into the show pretty blind.
Okay.
And yeah, so I had a pretty blind run, and I had some particular opinions of that.
Ooh,
Going
okay.
into it.
Okay.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
definitely discuss this.
Yeah, no, so we both watched episode 1. I haven't watched anything more just yet, waiting for the girlfriend to, like, have time at the end of the day to actually, like, sit down and kind of, like, watch that kind of meaty chunk of a show these days.
Yep.
It's hard for us to get, like, an hour of just, like, unadulterated, like, TV time. So, but I was genuinely enthralled. She's never seen it. She has no idea of The Last of Us. No idea at all. I remember the opening of the game very clearly. I've seen it quite a number of times. You saw it in the trailers, like way back in the day, and I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was extremely true to the game itself. Shot for shot, it was almost impeccable, and I think that this is weirdly enough like a video game adaptation to TV/movies that we can kind of be proud of. And I'm really excited to keep going and seeing the rest. I haven't seen any of the clickers yet or anything like that, and I'm kind of stoked for us to really get to see, like, some bullshit happen, and some people really kind of die off, Um,
I have a big question around this. So the question then is, do you prefer the game or the movie? I mean,
uh,
I know you didn't. I know you didn't play the first one, but you can guess.
I'm definitely going to enjoy the game more. The game, by all means. Like, I mean, it's one of those things that, like, let's see, other Naughty Dog games that I've played in the past where, like Uncharted, right? And I would call these things like these amazing interactive movies. And sometimes the gameplay can actually get in the way of the overall experience of, like, being able to visually feel the story, to be able to really, like, engage. And those lull points of, like, when I die because I'm terrible at certain games, or or like, oh, I went about this challenge a little bit like a weird way, or like, hey, we had to make this kind of arena based, stealth based combat, can kind of get in the way a little bit and not character build in the same way that the cutscenes, the you know I don't know, like, not even the cutscenes, but like the more interactive elements where it's like, hey, like, I've come up to this point, there's something happening in the area that I'm in, and I'm kind of watching it or viewing it happening, and it's one of those, like, very set piece moments. Um, and I feel like sometimes the gameplay gets in the way of the feeling of those things, and it's interesting because, like, those moments shouldn't be the lull moments, right? Like, the gameplay, it's one of the only games where it's flipped for me, where the gameplay is almost like, no, just actually, can the game just take this over? Like, could the game do something cool? Can I just put the controller down and just be like, autoplay, like, build me a cool path to go and kill all of these people and make it really interesting, and I'll just sit there and be like, ooh, sweet, awesome. You know what I mean? And I don't know any other game that's kind of like that in the same vein, but I definitely think that the game is like still the better medium for it, you know?
Interesting. Yeah. I've been talking to people about the game because I don't know as much about the raw experience. And I have heard some people say, I actually don't quote, I don't like the game, but I really love the story.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I was really thinking about like games that are very cinematic driven. But there is like one property of games that makes it naturally different than any movie, which is you get to play as the character.
Hmm.
So a question to you, especially because you play a lot more narrative games than me, is it there's probably an element of you feel like you're Joel or you feel like you're Drake. Um, th- how much does that impact things in like being able to play as the main character?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, because sometimes you definitely feel like you're like, I'm just following in the footsteps of this thing, or I'm helping to progress that character to the next point of the story, right? And I'm not necessarily that character by itself. And I think that there's like a weird thing in gaming where like sometimes like those things can switch off, right? Sometimes you can get control of the other character, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, like, is that is that cool? Is that not cool? But like playing through like The Last of Us Part Two, like I definitely felt like a powerful character. But you know what I mean? Could myself put myself in the body of that the female protagonist or antagonist or whatever at that point, right? I never know the fucking difference between those words. I'm dumb, dude. Don't worry about me. You know what I mean? So I don't necessarily feel like that character within those things because it's so driven, right? Like the game is on rails, right? Like it really is like I'm going from this point to this point to this point to this point. There isn't any choice within the thing. So it's more of like, okay, story, story, story. Oh, now I take over. Okay, cool. Well, I guess all right, grand. Like I'll move in, push my character then to the next place, and
Uh,
I'm kind of pushing the pawn. You know what I mean? Or pushing the
yeah.
queen across the board, and I get moments where I can, within a zone, I can kind of do some things and craft some stuff. But do I feel like it matters for the overall story? Like, not necessarily, because like at any point, like my character could just break their leg in like the next scene, and I would have almost nothing to do with that. But it was just part of the story. Now I think like the big thing is like exploration gets rewarded a little bit more in Last of Us Part Two because you get a little bit more story outside of the story. You can go find some stuff, some comic books. There's like more interactable moments where you can kind of sit down and like play guitar and enjoy kind of the living world that you're in, and it does kind of frame you and sit you into that space a little bit more, and you do feel very like kind of enthralled. Like you do feel like it fits a little bit. So like, I mean, obviously, Last of Us Part. We're talking about the TV show for the first game, but my thing was like The Last of Us Part Two, going into Seattle and being able to kind of like move through the town almost as a whole, or the city as a whole, and seeing like a lot of the things that really do exist and be there, but then see it in this kind of like warped reality. And I think that that's the cool thing that really hits home within the whole series, right? It's like this could happen, right? You know what I mean? This is an alternate reality to this, but it's on our timeline and feels very natural to us in the same way. Even though, like, um, I think I guess on the interesting things like The Last of Us part, the first one, the one that we're talking about, you see people like pulling out their old Nokias and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So it's like it's before. You know what I mean? Which it's kind of cool in that kind of sense because it's like I don't know of a TV show that isn't like either way in the past or way in the future that hasn't taken some element of the slate phone and you know or anything like that or or it's like X-Files, and it's like we gotta go to a payphone and we gotta get to a rotary phone, or it's uh, what's it called, like NCI.
Nostalgia? What do you mean? What do you mean?
Well, yeah, but you see the cell phones that they're using,
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
right? But they're using like '90s technology.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't know. I can't think of it like a big show that like sits people in that world.
Oh, okay.
You know
I
what I
see.
mean? Where
Yeah,
they go and say, "Hey, no, like the internet was just kind of coming out, and computing was kind of, it was still there, but it's not the same way. Like people were kind of like still ham radio enthusiasts, as you might call them, right? But like, yeah, I mean, so the technology was like a little bit more set into like 15 years ago rather than, super in the future and super in the past, which I kind of liked because it feels like a little bit more. I don't know. It feels like he lived through it at the same time too.
yeah.
Too.
It's
Maybe
I
that's
don't
me
think
just
it's just.
showing my age, but
I think it's more than that because me and my wife were watching it, and we thought, oh yeah, they don't all have cell phones at this point. So it's more realistic that like people can be, not have enough information that the city's getting ravaged by these people because we don't all have cell phones back
hmm
then. So the setting actually plays a little bit into it. I wanted to jump back to a point that you said about player choice, though, which I thought was pretty interesting. So, do you think because you can't make any player choices that is kind of preventing you from uh, uh, immersing yourself as that character?
sometimes, yeah, because if you can't control, you can control the body of that character in the moments of combat, right? But if I can't necessarily control how that character is going to act within a situation, it's hard for me to sit myself in, like, let's say like the cyberpunk esque, or like the Morrowinds or the Skyrims or any of these types of things. Like, I'm not that character, right? I'm not necessarily that character. I don't have full autonomy over that character. The certain things I might do later on where it's like, and maybe I'm just missing it, right? Where like I can choose to kill somebody or not kill somebody, or save this person or not save this person, and that might inundate or change some of the thing. But for the most point, it is like linear narrative through line, go from point A to point B to point C, and move through the thing. And really, that's one of the only ways that you can kind of build that type of experience at the same time too,
Absolutely.
right? There's so many places where like, oh, if we had to go and build 4 or 5 different scenarios for how like this thing would play out and how everything was going to, fit together then within the greater narrative, we'd never make the game. We'd never get it, and you'd also never have that kind of like that great feeling, you know what I mean, of the whole thing. And we've talked about that, like of how like Detroit Beyond Human, I think, is like a pretty great game with the amount of different kind of choices that you can make and how that can necessarily like, find the storyline within the thing. But a lot of those experiences are actually very condensed in terms of like how much you can really experience, but there's a lot of branching narrative. And when you have a lot of branching narrative, you create a lot of work for yourself. So you can't necessarily go long and be very, have like a big true line, a big depth. You have to put in a lot of effort to kind of to do that because of the branching narrative. So, they get away with that by breaking up the game into chapters and I'm moving between these different experiences. So there's a lot of choice within each like individual experience, but at the end, like the player kind of has their own moral choice that has been a culmination of all of the choices that have led up to that point. They don't necessarily have to align, like, oh, I actually went to this ending, and then that ending now means that this character's dead, so blah, blah, blah. It's not really like that. It's more of just like, morally as a player, how do you feel when you hit the very last moment? What do you do, and what's what does that make you feel, and how does that impact you like mentally? And I think that that's really cool because it's kind of meta in the same sense. Like, it's not like I'm not actually having to put you on a track within the game. I'm actually just kind of like morally telling you, like beating you over the head and saying, where are you within this title? And again,
That's
this is
pretty.
not to say that this is a bad thing. I think that linear narrative games, on the rise, gonna have a great resurgence. went away for quite a while. Like remember what, like 10 years ago or whatever, when all these fucking companies, Activision and everything, were like, "Fuck story mode. This shit
Yeah.
sucks. No one wants to. Who's gonna fucking buy that kind of game?" And then all of a sudden you're like, "Ah, yeah, actually, do you know what? I don't like people. I don't.
Yeah.
Xbox is fucking crazy, dude. These people are cracked out." Screaming at each other. I don't want to hear people with their fans directly beside their mics blowing in. This is not fun for me, so I'm out. I want to go
Yeah.
play by myself.
And there's sort of a general backlash against open world games. Open world almost has a negative connotation to a lot of people, and that's just based on some of the popular games that come out where people are like, open world is watered down. So
Yeah,
there's sort of a slow tide against that. I'll quickly talk about my impression of the game, though.
please do.
So yeah, or not the game, the show. We were watching the show, and at some point, I think it was in the city. They reached the city, and I had a very clear thought in my head, which was, and again, this is because I haven't played the game, but I thought, um, if I was playing a game, I would be pissed off right now. I'd be pissed off because there's all these cutscenes, and I just want to get back to the gameplay. And although I haven't played Last of Us 1, I have played narrative games. And that's usually how I feel. Especially if the gameplay is fun, I'd rather hop into the shoes of my guy and make some decisions or choices and run around. So I love the show. I love that I did not have a choice but to watch the narrative, so there's no competing demands.
Sure.
If I was, yeah. So that was my thought. I think my wife felt the same way because she tends to like she likes Stardew and some other games where you have basically full autonomy at all times.
No, totally. Like I would encourage you go take a look at least the. I mean, you don't have to play it now. I would say play it like once you finish the show or whatever like that. But and then see the kind of dichotomy between the two. They do try to sit you as much into the character as possible. There's not like a lot of like cutscenes. You are like kind of playing the character as much as they can afford you to at the same time, right? And you are kind of like in those narrative moments as much as you can be. But how do you feel about the conflict so far? Right? Like we're in Boston. I can't remember, right?
Yeah.
Right. We got the
I mean,
Fireflies versus
yeah,
the New Republic, basically, right?
it's
Um,
all super interesting as
yeah.
a narrative. Although I suppose as I guess game designer, if I'm thinking of, oh, can I support the coalition versus the rioters, that could be really interesting. But I'm guessing you can't do that in the game.
No, your whole thing is actually like fuck both of those. Like I need to get out. Like I need to go. Like I need to get the fuck out
Oh,
of here. Yeah, we got other shit to do for
yeah.
sure. And I kind of appreciate that too, where it's like, hey, maybe I don't need to fucking join a clan. Like fuck all these people, dude.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just gonna run and gun everybody else down for sure.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the casting so far? Do you think like the
You
people have done pretty good overall?
I think
'Cause
so. No, nothing certainly has jumped out as poor. And I know the main character. Everyone loves this actor Pedro, but I have no affinity to him. I didn't watch The Mandalorian. I didn't watch a lot of his stuff, so I think he's totally fine in this, just
yeah,
as a non-fan.
I really like him. As somebody who's like these characters are very impactful to the people who watch the game
Yeah.
or who play the game, right? Like they really do like grow into you. You do really like learn a lot about their life and get a very emotionally attached to them at times. And I think that they picked the right person for that role, or at least as right as you can be for that role. Um, my thing is that I don't know, like maybe I'm just sexist, I don't know, but like I don't like the Game of Thrones girl as Ellie, right? Like I just don't. If you like comparison wise, like the attitude is there, but like comparison wise, if you just put it like face to face, like I'm used to The Last of Us Part 2, so it's a little bit more grown up, I guess, right? But I just don't. I don't see it, and it kind of breaks my immersion a little bit. Uh, and also, I mean, I don't know. She doesn't have a lot of. I mean, whatever. You mean whatever. The young actors, actors and actresses, what you gonna do? You know what I mean? Everybody's trying to do their thing. Good for them. You know what I mean? They're trying their hardest. They're in multi-million-dollar things. They're doing great in life. Fair play to them. I just would wish a little bit more like facial expression, emotion. You know, a little bit more like if I'm angry, like be kind of angry. You know what I mean? Like, whereas I just see a lot of blankness in the same way that I saw in the episodes of Game of Thrones that this person was in as well too. So it's like I think that was one of those kind of casts where it's like, hey, like it's HBO, and hey, this person did great in this other one, and people really like them, and like great, people really like them, but I don't know, it's not perfect for me. It just like kind of always kind of chips me out a little bit, but you know what I mean. I'm ready and willing to get into it and see what happens. You know what I mean? So
I do have a question
yeah.
about Ellie. In Ellie in the first game, is she immediately likable? Like, do you like her as soon as she appears?
No, 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 not necessarily. You kind of maybe like the rebellious side of it all. You know what I mean too, where it is just a big like fuck you, to everybody else around you. It's that more kind of younger teenage angst, right? But it's also just like, hey, like this person kind of was kind of prepped and ready and grew up through a little bit more of this as well too. So it's like they're kind of that edge of first generation of this problem, and um, they're able to cope and deal with it in ways that the older heads are not necessarily. Like they still haven't reconciled that like the old world that they knew and worked in and their office job and everything is gone. You know what I mean? It's now all of a sudden they have to deal with like the world that they're in, and I think I think having like that character importance of their importance within the greater world with the treatments and everything like that, and you know what I mean, and trying to save humanity and everything like that is definitely like a big deal. So we'll just kind of see how all of those things kind of play out. But like I know the end of the whole thing, and I tell you, this is one of my favorite things actually, to watch a TV show backwards. Watch the last episode first and then go all the way back to the start and then watch it from there. Or like watch the
What?
last season first and then go all
Explain
the way back.
explain that.
So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
no, totally. Go on. Ask your question and I'll try and
No,
frame
no.
it.
I was just gonna say I will say my favorite movie of all time is Memento, which is a movie that goes backwards.
Oh, sick.
Uh,
Yeah.
so,
I don't know if
but
I've
go
ever
on.
watched that.
Explain that. What's
Yeah,
that?
I don't know if I've ever watched Memento.
It's
Um,
cool.
that doesn't have Christian Bale in it, does it?
No.
No, that's The
As
Machinist.
Guy Ritchie.
Guy Ritchie. Oh shit, I should definitely watch that then. Guy Ritchie's legendary. Um, yeah. So take it this way, right? This show has, let's just say, a fictional show has 6 seasons, and it's all completed. It's all done. Story's wrapped. Starting at the last season drops you into a position where of conflict, where you're almost towards the very end. You have no idea who the characters are. You have no idea, what their situation is, and if it's like a survival type of horror thing, let's say like a la like The Walking Dead or something like that, right? You see different characters than you may have seen in the trailers, or you may have seen at the start of the things, or in the promo images for like the first season. So now all of a sudden you start getting into this thing of like, okay, who are these people? And you start learning who they become over time as you watch that final season, and then you watch the final resolution and how they feel about it. And then when you drop back to the very first season again, then all of a sudden you have this context of like where they're gonna go, and now who they were at the start becomes this growth period where like you actually have a data point. You're not just like dropping into a show and being like, okay, this is a little rough. It's season one. Like this is the pilot episode. Like this came out so many, like a couple of years ago or something like that. Like, let's see what happens. And it's kind of weird and bunky and things are happening and you're like, blah, blah, blah. Like, and you learn, because there's all of this injection of who these people are at the start, right? Like there's always this character building that has to happen to get people involved and engaged within these characters and their storylines. But by watching the resolution of their storylines first, and then kind of like gaining a little bit of knowledge of who they are then, and then going back to the beginning, and then seeing where they actually came from to get to there, and then also seeing other characters that you're like, you're not in the final season. You're not in the final season. You're not in the final season. You're kind of just waiting for him to see, like, how does that dude get offed, right? How does that person then, like, how does their story arc resolve? Like, how do they get in and out? And you kind of go and see who's the main character and who's not the main character, who's kind of got plot armor and not plot armor. And you could play your mind around that a little bit more, right? So I just feel like that being able to see the growth of a character from end point to finish, and also like hoping that like the final season is like the strongest season within the thing, right? It's not usually, but there is like some major resolutions that kind of happen there. So you can get some happy resolve at the end, and then kind of take that and then go back to the start and then try to like move that through the line a little bit more. So
yeah, I wanna reply to that. I wanna show off how sophisticated I am. No, I was literally just watching a random YouTube video like yesterday. I
okay.
kind of talked about this, so no, not a film buff, but Alfred Hitchcock is known as the master of suspense. I was like, okay, why is this? And he talks about how mystery is just like, well, there's two different things. There's mystery and suspense. And mystery is what you're describing, which is watching a show normally. You're just watching, you're in the dark and events are happening and they have a lot of shock value because you have no idea what's happening.
Sure.
And you're just watching the show as is. But he's like, no, screw that. I love suspense. Suspense is giving the viewer information ahead of time. Kind of like here's a classic example is there's a movie where you watch a guy plant a bomb that's going to explode in 5 minutes.
Right.
And then you just watch this car driving around. So you have this information, what's going to happen. You're like, oh my God. Your mind just going this whole time is like, is it going to explode now? Is it going to kill these people? And this is pretty much exactly what you're talking about, which is if you watch the last show, you're like, oh my God, this guy is now the king. How did he reach there?
Yeah.
And then you're thinking the whole time is, it's suspenseful. You're like, what are the events that led to this point? So very different dichotomies, yeah. And you actually just pinpointed it yourself with your outrageous viewing habits.
I'm a fucking loser, dude. I'm an absolute loser.
No, you're a legend like Alfred Hitchcock.
So. I just like to make my own TV show. Can I? I'll just dip in season 3 and see what happens. I'll just see what happens.
Yeah, no, a masochist or an absolute crazy person at that point, but. No, I like it. So I kind of feel the same way about this show. And it's nice having a partner that doesn't know anything about it. Literally no clue at all. Has no idea of the story. Has no idea of the setting or anything. And I'm watching that first episode being like, oh shit, like I know what's going to happen next. And I'm curious to see how they transpose it. It's kind of like that outer body experience where I'm constantly like, pittering the game to the show, so it's like very difficult for me to kind of like separate those two. But because they've done such a great job of like being very true to the source material, which they fucking should be, you know what I mean? The game is there, like it exists, right? So it's like don't deviate so hard. Like they even use the same lines and stuff from the game. They use even the same camera angles, which I think is even cool, right? Like which is smart. I think it's just smart. I think it's just the right thing to do. The game is set up cinematically. It's set up. It's directed. It's very clear in what their vision was for that title, and it persists, works, and and continues to work. So why fuck with it? You know what I mean? Just take the movie and or that was the game and put it into the show. I think that it's gonna be much more entertaining for me at least than House of Dragons. Much more so. I don't really have any affinity towards like that version of Game of Thrones. I didn't really have that much affinity towards Game of Thrones at the start, in general. But I watched every episode and enjoyed it for the most part. You know what I mean? It was pretty fun. Although, we all know what happened within those storylines, and there's just so many different things that happen that are just unexplained, and you're like, hey, that guy just came back from life. He came back from the fucking dead. No one gonna fucking address this. No one's gonna say anything. We're not gonna get any resolution to this. Alright, cool, whatever. Grant, keep going then, whatever. I don't care. It's your show. Whatever. Just I'm along for the ride, like whatever. So I don't know. We're waiting for episode 3 now. I haven't watched episode 2. I will get into it and I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be good. I hope.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right, it was a good move. If you have a cinematic game, then, I mean, just take it, run with it, you'll make people happy. There's not any reason to be like, you know what, I'm going to shock people with some plot twist that, I mean, maybe they're going to shock people with a plot twist, but it's like, well, you don't really need to. But yeah, if you're taking a game like Mario and turning it into a Mario movie, you're going to have to be really clever for your adaptation, what you're going to do. And it is a harder ball to knock out of the park.
Yeah, that's how we get fucking Sonic. And
apparently they're all right. Apparently they're all right.
Well, I mean, good for them. I mean, some people need work, Jokes. I don't know. I never watched them, to be honest. So, I mean, but you're right though. Like, you mean adapting something that's not meant, that is very much game focused, is much more difficult to do than it is to move it into thing like compare these types of things to like Hitman had some movies, didn't it?
Oh yeah, it did.
Hitman is like, Agent 47, you sit in the body of that character, here's the scenario, go off, like do it however you want to do it, right? And that's the fun of the game now, right? Like before it was there, there's still like it was a fair true line of like what you're supposed to do, but I think now it's become more of a like sandbox. Here's a billion different ways to murder people, figure out your most fun way to do it, and kind of build your own entertainment there. So like to me, like that almost doesn't transpose because there's not like really necessarily like this narrative wise, and then how do you do it and then not make it like crappier than like, I don't know, James Bond or something like that, right? Like, you got to make the character intriguing, but the character's kind of a mute, supercell agent that just, like, comes in and just starts, fucking hitting people over the head, stealing their clothes, and moving around the place. Like, how, you know what I mean? How do you make that work in the same vein? So, I think that there's worse games that you could take and try to adapt into things that are much more difficult.
What is your favorite video game adaptation to a movie or a show? Ultimate.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Who knows? I don't know if I could tell you. I really don't know.
I mean, they can all be bad. A lot of them are pretty bad, so it's okay if you don't even like them.
I just can't even think of any off the top of my head. You know what I mean? I can't think of any that I really liked. Yeah, go on.
Mortal Kombat.
The
Mortal Kombat movie, I've watched at least a dozen times. There you go.
Yeah.
And the new Mortal Kombat movie was also great. I loved that too.
Oh, crap. I didn't... Yeah, no. When you said Mortal Kombat movie, I was like, isn't that 1998 or something like that? Yeah.
Oh, like, yeah. Either one.
The real, like, El Clasico one. Like... Mm-hmm. Can you just rattle off a couple more? Like, can you think of any more off the top of your head just to, like, try and refresh me? I'm genuinely, like, at a loss to even think of
You're actually right. Because only Street Fighter come... I can only think of the old, really bad ones, like Street Fighter, Double Dragon, and the 90s ones. There has been a lot of recent ones. There's Tomb Raider, I guess.
Oh!
2 Tomb Raiders.
Yes, okay, I do... Some of the old Tomb Raiders with Angelina Jolie... I actually did enjoy. I enjoy.
I can't remember the movie. I did watch it.
I just remember her coming down in her scene where she's just like strapped in, just goes, and just starts flipping around, shooing people around the place.
Do you remember that?
That's pretty sick.
A bunch of Resident Evil stuff nowadays. Monster Hunter.
Yeah, haven't watched any of the Monster Hunter stuff. A Resident Evil one would be fun. A Silent Hill one could be fun. Could be fun, but I don't know how you would build
There is a movie coming out in Silent Hill, but
here's the thing, right? I actually, if you're gonna cross over, right? I guess this is not to keep harping on this whole thing, right? I don't know if you watched the Drake's Fortune movie, but I haven't
I
watched
mean,
that either. But I would have said that that would have been a good adaptation in the same way, and The Last of Us set a kind of a precedent or a platform for like, hey, how this should play out,
yeah,
because it's the same type of thing, right? Very linear narrative. I'm moving from place to place. I'm going from location to location. But again, I don't know if that one. I don't know if I felt like great about that one. I think a lot of it was because I don't know, like the CGI like felt a little much. You know what I mean? Whereas I feel like at least the HBO, this TV show is a little bit more kind of like on location, I guess. You know what I mean? A little bit more set pieces and stuff like that. Obviously, I think every company now is doing Unreal background, tracking camera and stuff like that, and then there's great assets that you can just use and pull from the game directly and throw them straight into a game engine and kind of get all the lighting and everything set up. Like it's all there, it's ready to go,
I
so
didn't even think about that. That's good.
saves a lot of dev time. It's a lot of cost savings right there, you know what I mean, too. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not bad, it's not bad. But yeah, look, whatever about that. Fucking hoorah. TV. Great. Get to sit down and fucking watch some shit. But yeah, I don't know. Do we want to get into the other thing then too?
Yeah, we should.
All right. So one of the other things that we were just taking a look at before we got online here was this website called gorilla.gg, GRILLA.gg. If you type in Gorilla Games in Google, you find barbecue grilling places before you even find the actual website for this games platform. Completed their open beta, or at least their beta of their platform for user generated tournaments, whereby players could create their own tournaments, put up their own real money pools, price pools for those tournaments, invite other players from the platform into it, and kind of control a really a real tournament platform for what they say is skill based gamers, but like competitive, but like not professional gamers, right? So a place for the every person to jump in, get into tournaments, and go from there. And the thing that kind of caught me was that, like back in the day, like being from the Irish British side, like we would play in LO3 Cups. It was called Live on 3. Playing, and these things were hosted tournaments that were just for the everyday common person. But you would win some prize pools at the end of it if you could win, or server time or something like that. And those things were really impactful for me as like an early gamer, in being 16 or whatever like that. Also, like MLG is obviously come and kind of gone at the same time too. But like we've had these kind of things in the past. But they just made a $3 million funding round for basically their opening press kit, their opening release, and I think that it's a very interesting concept. In the world of Face It, in the world of Battlefly, and some of these other ones as well too. It's like, yes, you can get players in and get them into an ecosystem and have them kind of moving money around within their own digital wallets within on that side too. But some of the things within the actual article kind of like gave me a little bit of pause. One of them was that player waging, like betting, like individual side betting, basically like, hey, like I'm not actually participating in this tournament, but I'm going to bet on this team to win, or blah blah blah, or this player to go 5-0 or whatever like that. I think is a very, obviously it's betting and everything is there, right? But this is all coming from DraftKings sports betting, and just general betting culture, and it worries me a little bit. It
which
does
is going really mainstream nowadays.
absolutely, like, you know, Christ, you know, you can't turn on a Super Bowl ad or whatever without seeing DraftKings, or like listening even to Spotify ads or anything like that without hearing one of these, you know, different companies and things like that too. And you know, those things definitely give me pause when it starts hitting into you know, into games more and more and more, right? We went through loot boxes, we went through gachapon systems. People hated these things, paying money for digital content or anything like that, but you know, they it does concern me that, you know, the more and more prevalent that betting becomes within the ecosystem of video games, the more chances there are for corruption, the more chances there are for gambling addicts growing up, and that becoming more of the game than the game itself, which I think is a problem. I think that you know, you know, I don't care if you want to think about like, oh, it's regulated or unregulated or whatever. Like, I think it is a thing we've already seen over the last like 7 years with skin betting and gambling through the Steam ecosystem, and being able to wager on CS:GO matches within the same thing, right? Uh, where, you know, how many times have we seen that go wrong, and how many different times have we seen players, you know, dropping matches, and you know, specifically like, hey, like, we're going to make this big bet over here, and then we're actually just going to go and pay off the team to lose and throw the game, and that's going to go and like swing the big bet or whatever like that too. I think that you know, I just think that in general, like, it's without the competitive barrier of professional sporting event, right? And we've even seen it in professional sporting events. What is stopping a non, you know, just like a bunch of amateurs throwing games, you know, within tournament structures to either launder money or to you know, like, make bigger bets, to make, you know, to make basically like false wins or stack the house, right? You know, horse racing has had this for forever, and had huge problems in you know, in trying to rot out that type of corruption of, you know, and so what does this mean for, you know, I could see this platform getting huge. I could see if you get enough users in there, I could see this getting quite large, but it does concern me on that side then too, of just like, what is, you know, like, what are the regulations there? And you know, one of the lines in the article, if you can read it out there, Calvin, it was in the chat, I just can't look at it right now.
Yeah, go
The
ahead.
player one.
The player one.
It's the picture that I have highlighted.
If you win, you get paid. The platform relies on the organizer of the event to police any disagreements.
Yeah. So the organizer of the event is just Joe Schmo. Anybody can go and make a tournament. Anybody can put up a prize pool. Players can even go and bet in and do like Dota style, you know, cumulative prize pools, and kind of add to those things. They can even buy individual users into the tournament. So it's like, hey, if, you know, this thing costs $1,000 to get in, and I want Calvin to be in that Smash tournament, I want him to be in that fighting game tournament, then I can help to pay for him to be in that tournament, like almost like a little GoFundMe or something like that, right? So it does kind of naturally bring up like better talent in that way, and but that one line where it's like the tournament organizer is the one that has to finalize all disputes before a payout happens concerns me, because like, what happens if, you know what I mean, I haven't seen an anti-cheat client in there. I haven't seen any sort of way that we've said like, how are you going to regulate that these people are not cheating, that they're not cheating either like sophisticatedly, like, you know, in a more organized fashion outside of the game, that they're not cheating directly inside of the game, and are we just going to go and take their word for it and do these payouts? So how, you know, and when it comes down to real money dollars, like, that can be a big deal, especially when people are side betting and trying to think like, oh, like, I'm going to make money off of this. I can make money off of this. I can make money off of this. So I'd like to hear your thoughts, Calvin. I mean, honestly. Is this a
Yeah.
good or a bad thing for the industry?
Oh man. So yeah, the essence of all this is you're introducing real world money to gaming, and almost everything you said about like the pitfalls and potential ones are very similar to what happened when people were talking about blockchain games and NFTs in games. It's like once money is involved, everything changes. Nobody plays Axie Infinity, which is the NFT Pokemon game. Nobody plays that game for fun. Period. They play it to farm and make money. Like that, the whole fun thing just gets thrown out the window. But yeah, this was alarming, and I'll say it was alarming because immediately I could summon up 3 examples of this where it went wrong recently in the fighting game community. So I'll just rattle off like 3 quick things. So there, like this month, there's a whole Matcherino scandal. Matcherino is a crowdfunding. You can crowdfund tournaments basically. So there's one aspect of this, and the person that was receiving the money, sort of as an escrow, wasn't paying out his players. He was keeping a lot of the money for himself. He was the biggest Matcherino user on the entire website, and yeah, they had to ban him. There's this whole trust issue with that. So yeah, so that's one, which is the fun. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. This is what Gorilla is supposed to solve, because your payments are supposed to automatically go out to players. So
When the match resolves. So the thing is like
exactly.
that. And now, admittedly, I haven't gone into that point just yet, where I haven't seen the tournaments actually be structured. I haven't seen exactly how we go and link, like, this match is live right now, and we know the score resolution. And I also think it's a little bit dangerous if once the game is directly over, that the money just gets paid out instantly, because of the fact that, like, hey, like, what if I have a dispute? What if I want to go and say that, like, no, that player was cheating, like, very clearly, obviously cheating. So, like, what's stopping me from just turning on the cheats at the very end and just being like, cool, got the payment, got the tournament payment, see ya, best of luck, you know what I mean? What do I do here?
You're absolutely right. So that first point actually is in favor of Gorilla. But what you talked about, so another thing that happened was that there's this New York tournament it was running an online tournament and a lot of it was East Coast players. But they had to ban Texas players, which lit up a whole storm. They banned them because their pings were too high. But but it was arbitrary. You know, it wasn't in the rules. They did. This was like, hey, these matches are lagging way too much. You know what? Screw you guys. So that was made on the fly, and that's kind of exactly what you're saying, which is like, I don't know, like
competitive integrity.
Yeah.
You're taking a bunch of non-professional gamers and trying to put them into a framework that has to build into competitive integrity, and there's some outer infrastructure that allows for those things to feel real, to feel like players are really, like, playing their hardest, that players are really playing the most natural way possible, that they're really trying their best, and that there is no outside influence or anything else like that too. And I don't know, like, I mean,
well, here's where the dispute gets ugly, because the Texas players were like, oh, we're totally fine, but it could have been the New York players who were losing, and then they wanted an excuse. So like, hey, these guys are lagging, so now it's integrity on both sides being questioned. So like you said, it gets really hairy in terms of instant payouts and stuff like this.
How do you just feel about gambling in games in general?
Oh, I don't. Okay, so luck and RNG, I love RNG. I put RNG in every single one of my games because I like it when people think on the fly. And in fact, I like gacha games. I like gacha games because you're given a random, it's like Pokemon. Instead of choosing Charmander or Squirtle, you get a random one, and now you have to play around that. So I've always liked RNG for that aspect. So I don't care that much about gambling in games.
Yeah. I'm super in. I fucking love gambling. I fucking love gambling. It sucks. I fucking love gambling. Like, I remember, Jesus Christ, like, 007, Nightline or Night Vision or no, 007. No, I don't know. It's probably just 007 like Casino Royale or something like that, right? Like really old school PS2 game. And they have a level where you have to go to a casino and you actually have to go and play poker or blackjack or whatever and win some amount of money before you can kind of progress within the game. I just kind of sat there. I think I just kind of sat there and just kind of played that. I think I just played it. You know what I mean? I think it just like all of a sudden made that the game and just sat there and kind of did that. And you know, I think that's. I've always loved doing things like death rolling in World of Warcraft. It's one of my favorite. I try to take death rolling into like every single game that I can. If you can slash roll in any of these games, I'm fucking there. I got conned like crazy.
Can you quickly explain death rolling?
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. So in World of Warcraft, if you could type slash roll and then a number, and it will roll between 0 and that number. Okay. So what you do is that you bet some amount of money, some amount of gold, and that's your number. That's your top number. So if you're betting 1,000 gold, well, you're slash rolling 1,000. If you're betting 100 gold, you're slash rolling 100, and so on and so forth. The goal is to roll as many times and not be last, always keep above 0. If you hit 0, you're out. You're bust. So if you're playing against somebody and we're doing it together, right? You put up 100 Gs, I put up 100 Gs. We slash roll together, and we always then take from our last roll. So if I slash roll 100 and then I get 83, well then my next roll is going to be slash roll 83. And it will keep going down until you get until one of us hits 0. And the person who hits 0 loses. So it's this ridiculous version of just pure RNG where you could have like, I'm slash rolling 10,000 and you do it and then all of a sudden it's like 3 and you're like fuck like fuck
Yeah,
you know, so you're always trying to roll the highest number possible, but then you get into these scenarios where like you're slash rolling on 1 and then you hit 1 on 1 and you're like, oh fuck yes, like yes. Because it just purely switches the pressure like back and forth like all the time. It's this absolute deep escalation of just pure randomness, right?
yeah.
There's no influence. It's just the game being the system, and you're just trying to have fun with it. Tried doing it in New World, and I got conned because you can slash roll in that game between 1 and 6 or 0 and 6 or whatever. But I didn't realize that if you actually type it out into the chat, it looks the exact same as when you do the random roll. So somebody kept baiting me, or I baited myself, where I was like, death roll me, death roll me, death roll me. And this dude just kept fucking typing the thing out. I was like, fuck. I lost like 7 times. I just like handed over like most of my gold. And I was like, how the fuck is this guy beating me? I stopped playing and I typed it out. And I was like, this motherfucker.
Yeah.
I basically just gave him all my cash.
Yeah, and when it comes to gambling, I can definitely understand why people are like really hesitant when it's against the house. But I will say, like gambling with friends, I think it's usually super fun because like somebody, either you win or your friend wins. I mean, it's win-win, and you get an exciting moment. So, but I can understand if the house is like has tricky odds, then that could be bad.
Yeah, my whole thing is I just get a little concerned because like games used to be games, competitive tournaments and stuff like that used to be a little bit more, about the appeal of getting first rather than the appeal of winning something at the end of it, right? It wasn't necessarily about the winning, it was about the prestige of becoming, being the best, right? And maybe those two things go hand in hand and I'm just completely missing it. But I do worry about the influence of these types of mediums onto individuals, even in the 18s and older, 21s and older, and stuff like that too. Like, whatever, each to their own. Everybody can go and like deal with it the way that they want to deal with it. Like I remember like being in college, in Ireland and stuff like that, and betting in Ireland is 18s, right? Not and we would do Cheltenham is like a massive horse racing event, right? And people get very dressed up, like very very dressed up, right? We're talking like full on suits, beautiful dresses, everything, to the nines, to drop loads of money on horse betting. But it's mostly just a piss up. People are out there to fucking drink excessively in nice clothes and feel posh for a day. You know what I mean? And you get your day of it, right? You get your moment. You get your time in. But then those things started to then pitter out into like, oh, I've got my mobile app and I can make this 3-way bet with this football team, and all of a sudden I'm like, well, no, I need Chelsea to win by 1 and Celtics to lose and blah blah blah, and then I'm gonna get a payout, and like
the whole social aspect you mentioned is gone.
Well, yeah, but also like but also like it became degenerate at that point, because like these, we didn't have money. We were college students. We didn't have cash. We didn't really, this was the money that we had to fucking live on. You know what I mean? And people were trying to use as a way to like make more money, the hope of making more money so that they could then, live a better life, or, drink more or whatever, or, have a little bit more at college. And 99% of the time it just ended up in more people just, like not eating. Like we just didn't, we just didn't have the money to even like, get our groceries for the week or whatever like that, too. So I've seen the other side of this where it slips into, and I'm not like, oh, it's a slippery slope, but it definitely like slips people into that moniker of like, one more bet, like one more time, like one more attempt, right? One more attempt. And I think the big thing here is that maybe it's not necessarily the prize pools that I care about. Prize pools has its own problem with the competitive integrity stuff that we talked about, but it's the side wagering. It's the being able to bet on individuals or teams being able to win or lose or anything like that. So I'm definitely curious to see, like, right now the tournaments are, kind of like $100 here, $50 here for winners, and that's okay. Like, cool, whatever. Small numbers are small numbers, But when things start getting into like those side bets where people are betting like larger amounts, now we've got some things to look at, And I just looking at major tournaments like CS:GO tournaments that had these rife problems, probably still do in the same way with how the skins betting was going, and IBUYPOWER issue, and everything like this. Like we have a precedent to go and say, hey, like maybe this just shouldn't be here, maybe it just shouldn't. But welcome to America, where you can do whatever the fuck you want, and somebody's always making toe off the line, you know what I mean? So best of luck to them, I guess, you know what I mean? But let's see if in a year we'll see a lawsuit or something come down, because I don't know, you know what I mean? But hopefully not, I guess.
Yeah, no, everything you said, those days are done. It is weird how money and esports, I know you weren't directly talking about it, but yeah, the landscape has really changed. People are like, oh yeah, Dota's a better game because it has a bigger prize pot, and like people are throwing these terms around. It's like, man, you guys are just like not playing the game anymore and just caring about prize pots. It's frustrating.
Look, what you gonna do? I'm old, so
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
That's life. I remember when games were just games, but yeah, it's just stupid. You know what I mean? But look, good for them. You know what I mean? I don't have much more. What do you want to talk about? Where are we at? Time-wise.
Got 15 minutes.
Oh, dude, we're at 58 minutes. We did it.
Okay. Hey, we made the finish line.
Dude, I'll cut it there. That's grand.
All right.
All right, cool. Calvin, thank you very much again. I will see you next week.